Yeah.
Could you speak on the Six-Day War and kind of just give it, I know it's long, but just abbreviated, and how it relates to what's going on now?
First, I don't call it the Six-Day War. I think that's poor terminology. It was a war that was the 1967 war is what you're talking about, which is when Israel invaded basically and attacked four Arab armies. It attacked Syria, it attacked Jordan, it attacked Egypt, and it also hit Iraq at the beginning of that war, and actually hit all the airports in those countries and debilitated their air forces. And then it invaded. It actually went into Syria, where it still occupies the Golan Heights. It went into the West Bank and took it over from Jordan, and it went into the Gaza Strip, and Sinai at that time, and took it over from Egypt. The Egyptians pulled out and made a deal with the Zionist entity in 1978 when Carter was around, and basically they got back the Sinai, and then the Gaza Strip remained under the occupation, Israeli occupation, and the West Bank till today is under occupation. So that period of time is when those areas became under occupation. So we had the first occupation was 1948, and then the second occupation was 1967. Is that what you wanted? Or you want more?
I mean, if time permits, I mean, I kind of understood then why, yeah, just like, I guess keep speaking on the political situation that led to that, and what was their justifying cause for that?
For that attack?
Yeah, or for like expansion.
What was the cause of the, if you want to?
Well, I think that was part of continuation of the U.S. hegemony on the region and strengthening Israel and making the idea of a land with no people to people with no land more more close to reality than, because at that time they only had the 1948 land, and in 67 they took over the rest of Palestine. So that was part of the a bigger U.S. orchestrated plan and taken over control of the region, which, by the way, the plan has not stopped, because we saw him in 91 going to Iraq and completely bringing that country to the Stone Age. But to answer their plan, the other side has to resist. So we see some sort of I call it the resistant crescent. It's the Palestinians, the Lebanese, the Syrians, the Iraqis, and the Iranians who are working together now in a link kind of, in a chain, like, to resist the U.S. and Israel plans in the region. And one of the reasons for this war in Gaza is because Israel and the U.S. thought that the Palestinians in Gaza, after almost 3 years of suffocation, are the weakest link of that chain, the resistant chain. And if they break it, then their plan will get revived somehow, because they're getting defeated in Iraq. They're getting defeated in Lebanon just a couple of years back. Israel couldn't defeat 3,000 Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon. They're getting defeated with Iran. They're not going anywhere with it. So they thought, after all, the suffocation, that the Palestinians are the weakest link. And if they break them, then they get at least another fresh air to their plan. And of course, they were wrong, because Israel lost that war in Gaza. And the chain actually is becoming more stronger now, because now it has the backing of the Arab masses, which wasn't clear before that. So So we see it as not only, you know, the issue of Palestine, bigger issue. It's an issue of hegemony in the region by the U.S. and its client states like Israel and the Arab states.
Just a quick question, that's all good. I was just wondering if they tried to tie it to the kind of Cold War paradigm, just as like now it's kind of being framed in the War on Terror, and was 67, did they, I don't know, I wasn't alive, but were they talking about, Egyptians or Jordanians as communists or as socialists, even if they weren't, I mean, just phrasing it like that in order to just...
There were definitely elements in the American administration who perceived or tried to, perceive that, because they used to portray Egypt and Syria particularly as being under the influence or Soviet influence, and that the role of Israel was therefore considered in those terms, that, as you say, as part of the fight against communism, the spread of communism, which was actually totally absurd, and not aware of the fact that, for example, Egypt was the strongest founder of the non-aligned movement, in fact. And that's why America didn't like Nasser too much, because he was actually one of the leaders and founders of the non-aligned movement, which didn't want to have, these kind of influences from the imperial powers at the time. So yes, they did. There were Americans. Kissinger was one of those people who always used to frame those things, and I think before him was, who was the guy before him during the... Yeah, I mean, all of them. There were people there who framed it in that context. Kissinger was more in the '73 war, actually, so there were others earlier. Yeah. So, no, definitely. There were, basically there was actually, if you look at the details, if you were asking about the details of what actually instigated that war, if you look at, now we have the benefit of declassified information during that period. So, for example, one of the excuses, one of the pretexts that was given at the time along the Syrian border was that the Syrians were actually lobbying some, this was the Israeli propaganda, were lobbying missiles into the northern part of Palestine. And actually this, in his memoirs, Dayan actually wrote that this was nonsense, that we made that up. There was also about the Straits of Tiran, what they call them? In the south, the Straits were, what's his name? No, the Straits, I forget the name. I think it was Tiran or something like that. But Nasser supposedly blocked those to shipping, right? And that this was considered an act of war by the Israelis, but actually the documents that have been released show that he said so, but he allowed all the shipping to go through in any case. And so there wasn't actually a blockade of those straits. And so a lot of those facts that are coming out later are showing that, in fact, that the propaganda, but no, actually for Israeli shipping, basically from the south, from the Nakab, from near Eilat, the southern part. Anyway, the point is that they weren't blocked, and that this was actually a false pretext that had been provided. So those were some of the details. Israel used its power to attack, and it knew that it was, it knew that it had the full backing of the American Sixth Fleet. It knew it had the go-ahead from the Johnson administration at the time, and that it would not be stopped. So, and that the Russians, in fact, were not providing as much support as the Arabs had hoped at that period. Yes.
It wouldn't stop even though they had the U.S. liberty at that time as well.
Right.